To tell you a little bit about the author's background, I'm going to give you a little information that's different than just straight farming. Henry had a 40-year career as a health policy researcher, working at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, Johns Hopkins, and the Mathematica Policy Research. And he published numerous papers in health journals. But he has since changed a bit and has been writing for the Hampshire Review about farming in the natural world, and is published in several anthologies of Appalachian writers. Priscilla, his partner in life and in this book, writing together and living together. We'll have to get to that at some point. But she attended Pittsburgh Institute of Art and in New York, and she designed and made stage clothes for country music stars, including Loretta Lynn. Wow. Under her own label, she sold hand-painted scarves and jackets to Nordstrom's, Henry Bendel, and many high-end boutiques. But she left the fashion industry to focus on farming and the conservation of heritage breeds, and has written numerous stories for Small Farmers Journal. And tonight, as I said, they are here to talk about their pre-release, The Keep, which is living with the tame and the wild on a mountainside farm. Let's give them a warm Books and Brews welcome.
Thank you.
So you see, I had to give that background so that I could ask this great question of how, with your background and living in a metropolitan area, you ended up purchasing an 80-acre farm in Hampshire County, West Virginia.
Okay, I'll start this story. It was just an odd set of circumstances, like so much of life, really. Priscilla and I would go down to Watauga State Park in West Virginia many times with our two boys. And one day we said, wouldn't it be really nice to just, rather than go down to the state park, have a place of our own in West Virginia? And one thing led to another, and we were coming back from Watauga State Park, and we stopped in a little town in the panhandle of West Virginia and picked up a newspaper. Well, on our way home to Baltimore, we got in a terrible traffic jam, and we were just sitting on the roadway. And Priscilla picked up that newspaper and said, well, let me take a look through the ads for land. And sure enough, here was a 80-acre farm listed for sale. And there was a phone number to call. And so we were sitting doing nothing else. So she called, and the guy answered, which was even more remarkable. And we talked a little bit, and he said, yeah, come on out tomorrow. So we went to Baltimore that night, finally, with the traffic jam moving, and then turned around the next morning and went out to the farm. And we found this farm to be exactly what we were looking for. So we always say that it's thanks to a traffic jam that we ended up with this wonderful place.
One never knows where a traffic jam will lead you. But I think that sounds like a good place. What, Priscilla, was your first impression walking around the farm?
Relief. It was so quiet. My cell phone didn't work. My children couldn't find me. Henry could barely find me. I thought, I have to have this place. And we did. We bought it that day. My husband has never done anything spontaneous in his life. And when I turned to him and I said, if we leave this place, we will never see it again. He said, oh, we're going to buy it. We walked back into the house with the man screaming that he was not going to give us a lower price. It was already dirt cheap. And we said, that's it. It's ours. And we never looked back. We never looked at another place. We never thought about it. Oh, it almost makes me cry.
Was your impression of the land? You kind of spoke about hearing something on the land. Was there?
Yeah.
Was that in your first impression?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is a little perhaps campy, but we did walk the land when we went back to see it, and it was clearly speaking to us. We walked through the high meadow with tall grass and could hear the rustle of the wind in the grass. We walked through the forest and could hear the run beds and the water babbling over the stones. We could hear the birds, and the whole place was asking us to take care of it. That's what I really believe. And so we responded, and we have tried to take care of it as much as it has taken care of us over all these years.
And that was 26 years ago.
Right.
Okay. So let's talk about the beginnings just a little bit and how you kind of straddled the life you were living. You, Henry, were working during that time, also in DC, and then a couple of days at the farm working as well. So how difficult was it to balance the job on the farm, the dreams and relationship?
Right. So, I would travel into DC and spend some nights with friends. I sort of slept around town in DC.
With my friends.
Right. And so whenever I left early in the morning, I would say, man, I hope everything's going to be okay when I got back. And it never was. I mean, there was always something going on. So there was always a problem that I missed. And eventually, when I got back 2 days later, I would have to take care of the crisis. But that was just the way it was. It was coming back from DC, driving back through first, the intense traffic on Route 66, and then finally getting to the back roads and the mountain roads, and then finally coming up our dirt driveway. It was as if I was entering a different world, and it was a different world, and I loved it, even though I never knew what I was going to hear when I walked through the door. Which Priscilla will be happy to tell you what she was saying when I walked through the door.
No, I won't. Don't worry.
Priscilla, now you had a little bit more of the responsibility on the farm. How did you know, or did you know what direction you were going to take it? And you were going to work with, you speak so beautifully of the animals, and your essays are I have to say, the book is just gorgeous. And you see, hopefully, a piece of how it alternates between different voices, different experiences. But for you, did you know you were going to go that direction with the farm? And
well, I forgot this little piece. I had to stop designing. I was also a designer and a textile painter. My true love was painting my fabrics. I love designing, but to put color on fabric was just so fabulous. And I was stricken, and still am, with rheumatoid arthritis. And if any of you know about it, it is a wicked, nasty disease. And it takes your energy along with other things away. And there became a time where I knew I could not do my business. I couldn't run my business. I couldn't design my clothes. I couldn't market them. I could not do it anymore. And we had the farm. And so I kind of went to the farm to heal, to cry privately. I had lost my best friend, my identity. And I remembered I was flying to LA for a trunk show, and I had picked up Hobby Farm in the airport. And that night, and read about it. And that night at the hotel, called Henry to see how many terrible things our children had done and what animal died. And I said, I know what I want to do with the farm. I want to farm. I want to raise heritage breeds. And he said, yeah. Okay, now do I have to take them to soccer on Tuesday or Wednesday? I don't think he was listening to me. And so then when I went to the farm after a year of a lot of treatments and being able to rest and not be in total stress, we decided to go to goat school. We went to goat school and we learned about goats. And we decided that's what we wanted to do. So we did heritage breeds, and we were dedicated to the betterment and biodiversity of our food system. So it was wonderful. It was absolutely fabulous. Hard, but fabulous.
Did you learn all of those things in goat school as to what to do when they were having twins? Or
do you remember that story?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Well, I did have this wonderful goat, one of 50, and she was not looking good in the pasture. I always walked the pastures when my goats were having their babies because I do not help with them delivering babies. I watch. If they do absolutely need me, I do help them. But, God gave them a lot of good stuff. So I wasn't really worried. And there was one goat that was really having a tough time. And I kind of didn't worry about her because this was her second litter. But then when I came around the barn again, she was not in good shape. I got her into a stall, and I knew from the two little noses that were poking out of her canal that I had some really big problems. So I ran to the house to get Henry to help me. He was working at home that day, rushed up the stairs, and all he could do is go, which means don't talk to me right now. I didn't. I backed down. But, I just figured, I got this. I have no idea how I'm going to get it, but I got it. And I did. And you'll have to read about it in the book. It was really an amazing event. I don't know how I got through it, but she was very trusting. I had raised her from a little teeny gal, and she let me help her. And she was fine. And she had two beautiful kids. And to this day, I still don't understand how we were all okay, but we were. So that was one of the many adventures.
All of these essays, which stretch across many different animals and moments, you connect us with these animals, and the names that you have for your goats are so applicable to who they are and expresses so much. So from Tiny Tim to Sid to all of these things. Henry, you also wrote, and what I love too about it is they quote lots of people like Gretel Ehrlich and Temple Grandin and people we know about. Barry Lopez, you have this wonderful chapter where you talk about wanting to know all that the land contains. and you had made a mission. It was on a weekend or something. You were going to go out and plot a section of your land and know everything within us. How'd that work for you?
Right. So we had been there for a few years, and I was getting close to bowing out of my professional career. And I thought, I really need to know more about all of the creatures and animals and trees and bushes and insects that lived on our land, especially if we were going to, do things to it. I thought, I needed to understand what I was going to do to these creatures. So I thought, well, of course, you can't go inventory all 80 acres. So I did a 10 by 10 plot of land to say, I'm going to find out what is in this plot of land. Well, one afternoon, I went out with my pad of paper and pencil, started scratching at the surface, and realized there was a lot of bugs in that ground. And then I looked up and I realized, well, there's actually a lot of birds in the tree too. So it wasn't just a flat space, it was a vertical column that I would have to account for. And then, of course, there was me. I'd have to account for me being on this land and all the roots underneath the land from the trees that were nearby. And of course, it was a silly thing to do. I threw my pad away, laid down on the ground, and just took a nap. And dreamt of all the birds and all that wildlife that was around me, and I had a wonderful time. But I still don't really know what all those creatures are that live on our land.
It writes beautifully, all that the land contains. Surprises.
Well, let me just say one more thing about that. The real lesson I learned from that experience was that one of the most important things were the dreams that people brought to that land, that we brought to the land. That the dreams, many of which, died. I often said that our farm was where dreams went to die of exhaustion. But those dreams were as much a part of the land as the bugs and the birds and the animals and the trees. They too were place mates of ours and that land. Anyway.
Love that. And I love that quote. I actually had written that down about the farm is the place where dreams die of exhaustion. And the idea that we did leave the farms and go to cities because it is not easy work. It is hard work. It is hard to deal with a very bad winter and have to handle animals and know you have to be there for them. Can you talk a little bit about some of those hard-earned lessons and harder times on the farm?
Death. Does anybody really talk about death on farms? And I'm not talking about killing a chicken. I'm talking about when your best goat, when your dog dies, and you need these dogs. They're our employees. They keep our animals safe on cold nights. So death is something people don't talk about, and you need to understand it. You need to know how to live through it, understand it in a way that you don't just say, oh, well, Bobby Joe is dead. What the heck? I can buy another one. That's a real spirit that was there to teach us all stuff. And so I think that one of the things that we really need to remember about farmers is they're not just struggling with debt and with drought. They're struggling with death. And I hope we can be more understanding and kind to the hardship of death on a farm. Sorry to make it so depressing.
No. That's a reality. And you speak of the same thing. You had to encounter that in a different way.
Well, right. Sometimes you have to put animals down because we couldn't afford having a vet come out. The animal were suffering, and the most humane way to respond to that suffering was to put them down. But every time we had to do that, it was not easy. And I must say, I had to do it, and so I had a gun to do it. And there was always this moment before the trigger is pulled where I had to be a not me. I had to step outside of me so I could do this. And I would pull the trigger, and it wasn't the pulling of the trigger that really was hard. It was the witnessing of the involuntary jerks of the small animal. But then there was this moment where everything seemed to pause between the before and the after. And I vividly remember sort of inhabiting that space as I witnessed a spirit leave. Luckily, we didn't have to do it very often, but it was never easy. But you're right. We can't leave. We can't stick too much on this depressing topic of death. It's real, but there were so many other things that allowed us to move on from those difficult moments.
And what were some of those things that allowed you to move on?
Season. You see those wonderful videos of the goats hopping and playing and oh my gosh, it was so fantastic. And when you see 50 of them hopping and jumping and running, and you realize there's one that is like Billy, the one that runs the whole joint, and he runs in front of everybody. And you know that he's really a cutie, but he's also going to be a brat. And so the animals themselves, and they have personalities, like your dogs have personalities. Well, so do your goats and your chickens and your cows. Oh, cows have great personalities sometimes. But they are a wonderful source of companionship when you literally are not going to see a person for 3 or 4 days, which sometimes is not so bad. But they're wonderful personalities. And if you can just try and listen, they'll tell you exactly what they want to say. You just need to try and talk goat and chicken and cow and pig and just listen. And that was a wonderful thing to learn, especially after living in New York City. So that was great, is learning that they want to know you too. And they're farm animals. They're not pets, but they're there. They're really there.
Priscilla was gifted at communicating with our animals, whether it was goats or hogs or horses. And she spent a lot of time with them. And yet I saw over and over and over again how she looked at an animal and understood what it was going through. Even before it began to show obvious symptoms of getting ill, Priscilla knew that she had to treat that goat for respiratory illness. And in many ways, I've always admired Priscilla's ability to intuit what an animal was experiencing. I was always playing catch up because to me, the goat looked fine, but not to Priscilla. And when she said, "You got to go catch that goat because I got to give it a shot," that meant I had to go catch that goat.
And how easy is it to catch a goat?
Not easy.
Well, I learned over time how to catch goats without killing myself. or the goat.
And you didn't learn that in goat school?
No. They didn't teach us in goat school. But we did become stewards, and we understood what that meant, what it means to take care of not quite 200 animals that really look to you for everything. And you want to do it the right way. You want to do it in a way that's responsible and that is caring, but is also extremely realistic. A farmer is a farmer, and they have to understand their animals, but they also have to make a living. And so part of that is understanding who the animals are, who Lucy was, why the black cow is so different than the red cow. Why can't she behave? Because she's not going to. And it was a wonderful and exhausting odyssey. But you have to listen to your dog, your cat, your gerbil, everybody. Just listen to them, and they'll tell you what they need.
So on that, note, one of the most vivid examples of communication for me was when I was going out one night to feed the hogs. We had four hogs that year, 3 girls, Iris, Ruby, and Whitefoot. And I was going out to feed them with these big feed buckets. So I'd go out to their pasture and go through a metal gate, and I would have the metal feed buckets, and they would bang on the gate and clang. And that was typically the dinner bell for the hogs, and they would come sprinting up the hill from the other side where they were gathered in a muddy puddle. But this night, I clanged the buckets and no hogs. And I wondered what was going on. I mean, they had, where were those slackers? I mean, they had never been that late. So I walked to the top of the hill and looked down towards the muddy puddle where they usually were gathering. And sure enough, they were there, but they were agitated. They were dancing around something that was in the fence that separated the goat pasture from the hog pasture. But I couldn't see what they were looking at because there was a big bush. So the 3 girls looked at the one boy whose name was Indy, and Indy looked up at me, and Indy came running up the hill. It was as if the 3 girls had dispatched a messenger to come get me. So I walked down the hill, Indy's running up, and he's winking at me, talking to me, and his message is really clear, like, we've got a serious problem. You've got to get here quick. So he turns around, runs back, and I follow him, come around the big bush, and I see the problem. Gladys, one of our goats, had gotten her head stuck in the woven wire and couldn't get out. And the 3 hogs were around her, 4 hogs were around her, watching her. And they were clearly now talking to me, like, thank God you're here. You got to do something. You got to get that goat out of the fence. So I bend down, I get it takes me a moment to push her horns back through the fence. And I turn around and walk up the hill back to where the feed buckets and feed troughs are. And so they're following me, and I know they're talking about the event. And I don't speak hog, but I'm pretty sure I know what they were saying. Like, those goats are idiots. What did she want to eat on our side of the fence anyway? I mean, and the other one, Iris, I think it must have been Iris, said, yeah, she didn't even thank us for that. I mean, a coyote could have eaten her if it wasn't for us. Anyway, they get to the feed buckets and they eat that that meal as it was, they ferociously just downed that meal as if it was the best food in the world.
They earned it.
They did. I was going to
They
say.
saved the goat.
I think you speak hog pretty well.
But I learned it all from Priscilla, really.
Well, we're going to turn to you all if you have questions for our authors here. Now is your opportunity to lead us down any path, whether it's about heritage goats or hogs or care of 80 acres. We haven't even talked about the land and what that entails. I'm going to repeat the question. Did your urban friends come to visit you on the farm? And what did they think? And you've answered, but keep going.
They loved it. They thought I was insane. They thought I had absolutely lost my mind. They knew I was strange anyway, but they thought, oh man, she's really slipping now, really slipping. But then I think that, and they kept coming to visit, finding reasons why they needed to come and visit, which was wonderful. But they always thought that we were a little insane. Totally. And they're probably right. Especially because we wrote a book together.
That was sort of not encouraged, right? It wasn't like a great thing that most, as a marital kind of.
Well, when I had to close the farm, because after about 12 years of farming, the arthritis was getting worse. And after a surprise 3-foot snow, and he was in town making a living, and I had to open the gates. It was supposed to snow about 3 or 4 inches, and it literally snowed 3 feet. So I had to open gates and dig them out with the tractor and dig them out with the shovel and make paths and take straw and hay to 10 cows, 50 or 75 goats, and we didn't have any hogs then, I think. And it was just too much.
So anyway, our city folks couldn't quite understand, but they were convinced we were crazy. That's for sure.
You did some special tours on the farm, didn't you, Henry?
Oh, those special tours. Yeah, yes. Well, I invited my colleagues from where I was working out to have to come out for lunch. So they did. And
picnic.
A picnic, picnic lunch. And of course, I had many younger colleagues too there, and they especially showed up, and they wanted to take a tour of the farm. And so we set off, and we walked up to where the goats. This was October, so it was actually breeding season, and we walked up to the pasture where our biggest, most incredibly powerful, impressive buck was in the pasture with probably 25 or 30 does, and he was going at it as he should. And one of the young colleagues and her boyfriend came up to the gate to watch, and it was like, wow. This really goes on. And it so happens that male goats, especially big male goats, have enormous testicles. I mean, that's just part of their development. Well, she couldn't stop looking at his testicles. It's like, look at the size of those testicles. And her boyfriend was obviously very embarrassed, and very soon after that went back down to the house. But she was just like, I mean, And then one thing led to the other. You'll have to read it in the book. But we eventually just left her there watching. I had to explain that male goats have absolutely no problem covering 25 or 30 does in a day. I mean, that's just part of their way they're constructed. But this was astonishing to her. That's just one story of what happens when city folk come to the farm.
And you kind of stayed away from that scene, didn't you?
I was serving pizza.
No. The real story about that was she would not come on the tour. No. Because she said, those colleagues of yours, they're very nice, but they'll ask stupid questions. And Priscilla has zero tolerance for stupid questions. Now, I don't mean to stop people from asking questions.
All yours are wonderful. I'm supposed to do this right. We would love it when you guys ask questions. We really, really do. Please ask questions. But what was so funny is when you would hear them say, "Good grief, look at his penis." Oh, it was just, yeah.
All right, another.
If you had to do it all over again, there are no stupid questions. What would you like to know?
What would you tell your pre-farmer selves?
What would you tell your pre-farmer self in how to begin or in what not to do?
Buckle your seat belt and hold on. Just keep going and follow your dream wherever it might lead.
Put your animals first. Not your money. Put your animals first.
The question is, were you selling off the livestock as you bred them? What were you doing with these heritage goats?
That was the fun part. I did sell mainly breeding stock. One of the things that we have to remember is we need heritage breeds. They are the diversity that we need in our farming. There's nothing wrong with Angus cattle, but if you just have Angus cattle, it's like the Irish with their potatoes. And you saw what happened there. You've heard this over and over again, but it's true. We need diversity, and these heritage breeds give us the vitality and the wherewithal to help what we have engineered now. Not that they're not good animals, but they get diseases, they get the this, the that, and a lot of your heritage breeds just don't have those problems, and we need them. So yes, mainly we sold stock for breeding, but I was also adamant and hard on my animals, I will admit. They were either good, really good, or they were a butcher. It went to the butcher. Now, the butcher we went to, I belonged to a organization called Animal Welfare Approved. And we had to live by a certain code of ethics with our animals and our farming practices. So when my animals went to a butcher, it wasn't just the guy down the street. It was someone that understood to treat them with dignity as they gave their life for us to have something to eat. So I feel it's very, very important to understand that there's that part that a lot of farmers are doing now, especially in this region.
But just to go on a little bit longer, Priscilla sold not just individual goats, but families. So she sold to breeders the little kid, the doeling, and the mother and the grandmother, because when they went as a family, they did much better. There was less stress, they survived more, And her reputation grew very quickly. I mean, people came from Illinois and Georgia and Rhode Island to buy Priscilla's goats because of her reputation of how good a breeder she was and how healthy her goats were. And in part because she began with this deep compassion for her animals.
But they had to do their job. If they didn't, they went to the butcher. And I think that that's something that people need to understand. It's not this fantasy la la. You got to make a living, but you got to do it the right way.
You spoke about a time that you took them to a butcher that
Oh, yes.
in the book. And so you could speak to that because it's not just to the butcher. You were very cognizant of where and what kind. Can you tell us what happened?
This was when we first had started, and we have this wonderful fellow that lives down the holler from us that helped us on the farm for years, well, the whole time. And he and I had loaded up our two bucklings that were kind of sorry. And we were taking them to a butcher that I had heard about. And we got there and we looked in the barn, and the fellow that was running the barn wasn't very helpful. And he said, just put him in the stall over there and I'll get it to him later. Well, our Eddie, who was still is our friend and was our worker, helped me get him out. We put him in this stall that was filthy, and we just stood there. But we thought, okay, this is business. We've got to be grown up about this. And Eddie had never been that quiet. He's a mountain man, one of few words to this day. And he didn't say anything, but when we got in the truck, we started out the driveway, and suddenly he grabbed my arm. We can't leave them there. We raised them. We took care of them. We can't leave them. And we went back and got them and took them home. And we found another way. But I thought, how wonderful that it wasn't me. It was him who said, we can't do this. It was his humanity for them. And yeah.
There's many stories where I was pulled away. There's a story about the dilemma of loving hogs, it's called. And I literally was pulled by my husband, and I was crying and telling him, get the heck away from me, because I was so involved in it. And in a very short period of time, you connect us to these animals and their life. So I appreciate the gift of that. The question is, are you still living at the farm? And let's talk a little bit about the folding and that transition and trying to understand the change.
We are still living there on the farm. We have a couple of horses and we take care of the pastures. But the transition was difficult because, as Priscilla mentioned, it was really the arthritis that made it impossible for her to continue. And I was continuing to work. I couldn't quit my job at the time yet. I couldn't retire yet. So the hard decision was to find good homes for all of the animals that we had. It took almost a year to find the homes we felt comfortable for them being in. Not just the goats, but the dogs too. That we had at the end there we had 3 guardian dogs that two of which we had to find homes for too, and that was not easy either, because we wanted to make sure they would live in a farm where they had a job and were respected for the skills those dogs brought to their job of protecting their livestock. But we did, and I think we felt pretty good about where everybody was going at the end.
There's not a day that I don't look out in those fields and see the ghosts of my beloveds. And it's been years.
The question is, he's marrying into a farm, and it's become his father-in-law's indentured servant. I'm sure he won't hear this. And the question of what you've considered in terms of succession on the farm.
I think there's some wonderful literature out there, but you're going to be an indentured servant, honey. I'm sorry. You're already that. I mean, if you're a farmer, you're an indentured servant. But it can get to be your passion if you make sure you do it in a way that touches your soul. Don't do it unless it touches your soul. It's too damn hard.
So after retiring from farming, what led to the decision to write a book together? I'll add that.
Well, we just sort of stumbled into it all. Priscilla, after the farming and after her farming ended, wanted to write about it, and several stories were published in the Small Farmers Journal, which is a well-known journal to small farmers. And I had been writing some essays that had gotten into some anthologies. And so one day I said to Priscilla, hey, why don't we put our essays together and elaborate and write a book? And she turned to me and she said, no way, forget it. And so the next day I said, hey, maybe we could write a book together. And it took a little bit of persuasion, but she finally decided that we might do this together. And one thing led to another, and we ended up having great good fortune in sending our pitch and some of our chapters to the West Virginia University Press, which I should put in a plug for the West Virginia University Press. They've been very helpful, of course, and they accepted us. And we found that we had a contract with them. It was quite a miracle. But I should mention that the most miraculous thing, I've said this before, the most miraculous thing was that we did not get a divorce.
Did you want to add anything to that, Priscilla?
It took a long time for him to talk me into this. But it's been wonderful, kind of. I was so distraught after losing my profession in design and then losing my profession in farming. I was pissed and sad. And a friend of mine said, oh, honey, write it down, get it out, just write it down. And I did. And the editor of the Small Farmers Journal, a wonderful periodical, I sent him a piece, and he called me and said, this is great, send us more, bye. And so I did. And then we started.
One thing led to another.
Writing.
And so it came to pass. But there was also a period where we were well into it, and Priscilla decided she didn't want to do it anymore.
He was mean to me.
All I was trying to do was comment on her story, which she asked me to comment on. So we got to a point where we would read each other's stories, our first drafts. I would read mine out loud to her and talk about mean. She would roll her eyes at certain and start shaking her head. And it was always the same comment. Always the same comment. Where's the blood? I don't hear any blood. You gotta get emotion in there. And it was difficult, but she was right. And so many of my essays were vastly improved because she rolled her eyes as I read them out loud. Of course,
And you should have seen my red ink.
well,
He was mean to me.
Well, I have to say the reader has you both to thank, because I feel that it comes through. And so that reflection and that expansion that you did as heavy work was good for all of us. Just one more question before we kind of finish out our evening and allow everyone to get your book. From beginning to now, how would you say that voice of the land, or how has it changed for you? And really, what's your role in how that land is tended?
We're stewards. And we love it.
well, I would say that the land continues to speak to us just as loudly and as softly as it did when we first stepped on it. And to me, at least, in its speaking to us, it has both brought us closer because we always come back to the land, and it has enriched each of our lives because it is there, it is always there, it will be there long after we go. And that preciousness of being custodians of it for a certain period of time is both an honor and a responsibility that together we take seriously. So the land will always be there, and I hope we will always be able to hear its whispers and its shouts and be able to respond in some way, and partly just by caring for it.
I think that sums it up when you say steward. It's one word, but it's such a powerful word. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.